last Sunday was a very well. The race itself was interesting. It was a historical day for Portugal, being the country to have it for the very first time, an F1 race. And it was interesting. Especially at this time of the year, I never thought I'd be talking about a European race in October. Okay, we may have had Russia in the past, but Russia's not. Russia's different. It's just cold or hot. But Portugal, the tyres just could not get warm. But either way, it didn't stop Lewis Hamilton from winning his 92nd F1 race win of his career. No other driver has reached that number. Michael Schumacher's at 91, and Alonso and all that, their 30s and all that, but miles down the list. But Jack Price, Lewis Hamilton, he's broken Schumacher's record. We were expecting this for some time, maybe in the last year or so, when we started to notice he got into the 80s and all that. But Jack, what an achievement!
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I know that, I think both of us would be honest in the sense that we're not huge Lewis Hamilton fans, but I think you've got to sort of hold your sort of head up high and say, you've got to respect what he's done in the sport. And obviously in the last few seasons with Mercedes has just been utterly dominant as a driver and as a team. So, you've got to give them, huge respect. I mean, like we said, he's smashed records throughout the years. Pole position, I think he did a couple of last season, I think, in terms of the amount of pole positions, and obviously that keeps rising as well. And when we saw the amount that how close he was to Schumacher with the dominance Mercedes still had, it was only a matter of time really until he broke that record. So huge congratulations to him, and obviously he was congratulating the team because every driver needs a fantastic team and car to help them succeed, and Mercedes have certainly given that since he's been there.
I mean, this topic has to come out because a lot of people will talk about it. Does that make Lewis Hamilton the greatest driver of all time?
I think a lot of people are, especially when question's been asked, everyone sort of dodges it, and I'm probably going to dodge it as well, simply because of the sense is that there's been so many obviously different eras. The sport's been going on for so long now. We're celebrating an anniversary this year of how many years this sport's been going for. So, if you put all the best drivers that have been in the decades on the grid with their best cars, it would be difficult for any driver to come out on top. I think you look at Schumacher, Hamilton, Senna, Prost, Sebastian Vettel's third on the list for wins at 53. But that just shows where Schumacher and Hamilton have been in terms of how far away they are from Vettel in third place. You put all them drivers into one race, and it would be, I'd love to see the outcome of that, but obviously that would never happen. So I think, you're fair in saying that I think he's one of the greatest of his generation, but I think if you say greatest of all time, everyone's going to have their own opinions on that, even though he smashed the record.
Yeah, I feel the same because, it's like that in tennis or golf or any sport, everyone goes on and says Pele was the greatest footballer, Federer was the greatest tennis player. But as you say, it's different generations, isn't it? Sport changes. There's more opportunities now, I think. I think with Hamilton, there's more races in a calendar season than what Michael Schumacher and Alan Prost and all that had. And, I just think I've always liked the words of, greatest in his time while he was on the circuit. Not, let's say in 20 years' time we see Vettel Jr. or Hamilton Jr. get more than the race wins of Lewis Hamilton or whatever, and then people would say he was better than Lewis Hamilton. It's like, well, we actually didn't see them race together, so how can you actually bring in a scenario that is fake, not real? So I completely agree with you where it is down to the generation. Did you ever think anyone was going to beat Schumacher's record? Because it just, I remember saying to myself a few years ago, actually, no, I do have another friend called Jack, sorry. I am cheating on you.
I should be the only one.
I know. He was actually before you. Okay. But we were both saying he was a big Schumi fan. He still is, I think. And we had a chat and we were like, surely no one's ever going to beat 91 race wins. You have to be consistent for a very long time. Do you ever think that was ever going to happen?
I think with how dominant they were as a team. Now, obviously, we've seen eras where cars have been dominant. You look at the Williams eras when Mansell was there. You look at, Lotus, for an example, back in the day with that lovely racing green. McLaren, McLaren, when Prost and also Senna were there at the time, McLaren were a dominant car as well. So we've always seen these bits throughout the years where a car is sort of bulletproof. But when Schumacher and Ferrari sort of came together, that was something else, and they were dominant for so many years. And I know you can sort of say the same thing with Vettel and Red Bull, but Ferrari and Schumacher was just something else. They were incredible for that amount of time, and when he got to that many victories, and honestly, I didn't think anything like that would ever be to that level again. But when Niki Lauda obviously somehow, Niki Lauda is another one who for me is one of up there with one of the greatest drivers, to be honest. And when he managed to get Lewis Hamilton to sign that contract to join Mercedes, back in the day, everyone, even myself, thought, God, he's leaving McLaren to go to this like mid-table Mercedes team
with no proven track record.
Yeah, and obviously you look at what's happened now and where they are, and what they've managed to do with that team. It's just been absolutely incredible. And I know, sometimes we can say they're really boring races because it's going to be a Mercedes win. Normally it is a Hamilton win as well. But you have to sort of take that fan aspect aside for one moment and just look at it as a business point of view and as a team point of view. And they've done an absolutely incredible job. And obviously Lewis has got to do it out on the track as well. But, if you're a driver, you want the best team and the best car. And Mercedes have certainly given that for him for the last few years.
I think as well, it was funny because I remember at the end of 2013, and actually we had just been friends from uni at that time, and Vettel made it 4 world championships in a row. And I was thinking back then, is this the man to do it? Is it going to be another German beating a German's record? But incredibly, 7 years on, it's just, as you say, Vettel at Red Bull's era was starting to end, and he hasn't really picked up from it since, while Hamilton had to just adjust a year or two, and then it happened for him at Mercedes.
Yeah, I think it was strange because like back in the day I was like, oh God, I've had enough of Vettel and Red Bull winning. Can we have something else?
I actually miss it now.
And now we've got to the point where it's gone even longer than Red Bull's dominance with Mercedes, and you think, we have somebody else win now. So it's like you always have that in sport where one car gets the most out of what can be offered in terms of each year, the criteria of how better you can make the car. And obviously Mercedes have been doing that year on year. Obviously we've seen Red Bull improve this year. Ferrari lost a bit, but I'd say they've gained more time. Obviously Charles Leclerc doing an extraordinary job in that Ferrari over the last few weekends. Renault have improved, not as much, but they've managed to get Cyril Abiteboul to get a tattoo. So that's just shown how well they've performed, and even McLaren and Racing Point are still in that bracket. So everyone's sort of improved, but every year on year for the last 5 years, Mercedes have still managed to find that extra edge to make the best.
I remember Daniel Ricciardo saying at the start of this year in an interview during testing, he just said, whatever we bring up, they do better, Mercedes. And he said, you can't not credit the team. Like they just think of everything. And yeah, it is, regardless, in any team sport, Mercedes should be known as one of the best. If anything, they should be team of the year because I think they're the only team to have won the Constructors' Championship at least 6 years in a row. And it will be,
I think yeah.
Yeah, because Ferrari had done it for 5 years. I'd imagine that was Schumi's era and Barrichello. So it just shows that with the right two drivers as well, I still look back at this and think for Mercedes to let go of Rosberg might be one of the best things that actually happened. For them, publicity-wise, it's good to say we actually had two drivers winning the World Championship in the same team in the same era. But now they can look at it and think, well, we've actually been able to get a driver like Lewis Hamilton to break records that no one else has ever done. So as a team and a solo effort, it's absolutely ridiculous what they've done in 7 years. It's not much. Yeah. It's not a long time in F1. It's not a long time to achieve all of that.
Yeah, and didn't they come into the sport after Brawn? So that was 2010. Yeah. So it's only really been 10 years, from start to finish. To be honest, when Ross Brawn, came in and Nico Rosberg was starting as well, and they managed to bring Schumacher back for that time, and even his experience at the beginning of Mercedes' sort of career back into the sport was enough to give him that little bit of extra experience. I know it didn't work out on the track to an extent where he was finishing, but even Schumacher coming back to give that help to the team was enough for obviously them going forward. So huge effort. And I think I haven't seen Toto Wolff's podcast interview yet that F1 have done, but they did discuss obviously Nico Rosberg and Hamilton's time, and he was honest when they said it obviously was fractious because as a team they weren't really cooperative and they weren't helping each other. It was one side of the team and another. So obviously now they have that where they work together with Bottas and Hamilton, and yes, Bottas can be like a number 2 driver, which does disappoint me because I like Bottas as a driver, and I'd love to see him step up. But I think Christian Horner said it the other week, like it's not just Bottas, it's Albon and Verstappen has that gap. Leclerc and Vettel now has a gap.
Yeah.
Ricardo and Ocon has a gap. Every team, even at the bottom of Williams, you look at Russell and Latifi, even they've got a huge gap between each other as teammates. So
financially, they have a big gap as well.
every team has that at the minute. So obviously, it's not just Bottas at Mercedes, but I think for Mercedes' point of view, as long as they win the constructors and they get to win the drivers' championship, it doesn't really matter to them as a team.
And of course, finally, let's talk about Hamilton's future. I mean, I think he does plan. He did say to Sky, I think the other day, that he doesn't plan to be in it for a long more time racing. But surely, I mean, that I can't. I've already said I can't see anyone else winning the World Championship this year. I think he's too good this year. So that should surely be his 7th. So next year, before the regulations change in 2022, surely he does it next year. This time next year, he could be a 8 world champion. And I have this feeling, Jack, that if he does, that could be the end of his career.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it depends on sort of how the regulations look. I mean, if Mercedes is still dominant, you look at, if you say he wins his 8th world championship next year, and you look at it and you think, can I get to 10? Am I quick enough to get to 10 world championships? Yeah. Because I don't think that would ever be beat. I don't think that would ever be beaten. I think 8's, a huge amount. And obviously, if he keeps going with these race wins, that's going to be an even higher. It's not like he's retired now at 92. This is going to keep going if Mercedes are going to be still unstoppable. So who knows where he could go in terms of race wins. But don't forget, big old Fernando's back next season at Renault. He could be there to sort of stop Lewis. But and obviously, we've got Vettel hopefully becoming a better driver at Aston Martin next year. So hopefully we do actually get some rivalry for Hamilton next year. But I think if Mercedes keep up this dominance, he's going to be looking at another world championship for next season as well. Because to be honest, as much as I love Bottas, this is done and dusted now for this year. So.